The galaxy had always underestimated humans. To the mighty Council of Star Systems, they were nothing more than a small, weak species barely able to hold their own against the harshness of space. Their colonies were scattered, their fleets tiny, and their technology primitive, or so the Council believed. Yet reports had begun to trickle in from the outer rim. Ships monitoring border systems were sending urgent messages. Humans were building weapons unlike anything seen before, weapons that could strike across the void with terrifying speed. Weapons called Railguns. Admiral Thar, a seasoned officer who had fought countless wars, read another of these reports with growing unease. He rubbed his tired eyes and murmured to himself, "They have railguns. They could destroy entire fleets from light years away." But when he brought it before the Council, his warnings were met with laughter. "Preposterous," said Councillor Mex, waving dismissively. "Humans are small, weak, and scattered. Their stories are exaggerations at best. Move your fleet forward. Nothing there can threaten us." Captain Lyra, commander of the First Fleet, felt a chill run down her spine. She had served the Council faithfully for decades, leading fleets into battles that spanned star systems. She had seen destruction, betrayal, and cunning enemies. But something about the human systems unsettled her. The reports were too consistent, too precise. The humans were preparing, and she feared they were far stronger than anyone imagined. She stood in her command bridge, staring at the blinking holographic map of human colonies, and whispered, "We cannot ignore this. They are not what we think." Her concerns were dismissed. The Council's arrogance was as thick as the walls of their chambers. They had faced countless species, crushed rebellions, and survived countless wars. Humans, they believed, would be no different. Small planets, small fleets, small minds. But Lyra could not shake the feeling that they were underestimating something profound, something that could change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Despite her unease, the orders came. The First Fleet was to advance into human space, ostensibly to inspect and protect Council interests. Lyra tried once more to impress upon the Council the danger of their decision. "Admiral Thar, we must proceed with caution. The humans, if these reports are true, they could annihilate our ships before we even know what hit us." Councillor Mex sneered. "Captain, you are letting fear cloud your judgment. Your fleet is powerful. Our fleets have never failed. Proceed and do not overthink it. These humans are nothing," and so, with a mixture of obedience and unease, the First Fleet left its jump point, sliding through hyperspace toward the outer colonies of Earth. Lyra watched her ships, sleek and deadly, gliding through the stars. The crew moved efficiently, unaware of the storm that awaited them. Some spoke of excitement, of glory, of the ease with which humans would be subdued. But Lyra could not shake the gnawing dread in her chest. In the silent moments of the long journey, she thought of the warnings, the reports, the unexplained disappearances of scouting ships, the strange energy readings from human worlds. Something about the humans was different. Not just cunning or bravery, but a quiet, terrifying resilience. They were preparing for something far beyond what the Council imagined. As the First Fleet approached the edge of human space, Lyra's unease turned into a tense anticipation. The planets below shimmered in their orbits, seemingly peaceful, almost naive. Yet in the darkness of space, hidden weapons waited, silent but deadly, ready to strike at the heart of arrogance. Lyra clenched her fists. "If they are ready, we will see it soon," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the bridge. "And perhaps we have underestimated them too much." The stars ahead seemed calm, almost welcoming, but Lyra knew the calm would not last. Humanity was preparing, and the galaxy would soon learn that their warnings had been real. Too real. The First Fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of human space, expecting the empty planets and defenseless colonies the Council had promised. Ships glimmered in formation, engines humming with precision. Officers stood tall on their bridges, proud of the fleet's might. Captain Lyra watched from her command chair, her heart heavy with unease. She had prepared for resistance, for rebellion even, but what she did not expect was the silence. The human worlds were quiet, almost peaceful, as if nothing of consequence existed there. For a moment, relief washed over some of the crew. "Easy victory," muttered Lieutenant Kran, scanning the planets below. But Lyra could not share their calm. Something about the way these planets shimmered in their orbits felt unnatural. She remembered the reports, the unexplained destruction of scout ships, the strange energy readings. Her instincts screamed humans were ready, and they had weapons unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Suddenly, the calm shattered. Sensors began to spike with activity. Warning lights flashing red across the bridge. A faint hum vibrated through the hull, soft at first, then growing louder, almost like a heartbeat in the void. Then, without warning, a streak of light tore across space. A single projectile, traveling faster than thought possible, slammed into the lead battleship. The explosion rocked the fleet. Alarms blared, systems failed, and the crew screamed in panic. Captain Lyra's eyes widened as she realized the truth. "They fired at us." "Already," she whispered, disbelief and fear twisting in her chest. The human railguns were not myths. They were real, and their reach was deadly. Within minutes, the lead battleship was reduced to a floating tomb of twisted metal and fire, drifting silently in the void. Chaos erupted. Ships tried to maneuver, but the humans struck again and again from points no one could detect. The projectiles moved with unnatural speed, tearing through shields as if they did not exist. Entire sections of the fleet vanished before the officers could react. Lyra gripped the armrests of her chair, feeling helpless. This was not a battle they could win with size or numbers. The humans were something entirely different, efficient, precise, unstoppable. From the communication channels came frantic voices. How are they hitting us from nowhere?" "Our shields. They're failing. Captain, we need orders." Lyra's throat was dry, but she forced herself to speak. "Hold formation. Do not panic. We need to survive long enough to learn their pattern." Her words felt hollow even to her, but she could not let fear rule the fleet. Not yet. Minutes stretched into hours, and with each passing moment more ships fell. The humans never appeared themselves. No massive armada, no alien warships, only their weapons, hidden, silent, deadly. They struck from orbiting stations, from moons, even from asteroids. The first fleet was trapped, outmatched by technology they had never imagined, and a cunning they had dismissed as impossible. Lyra moved to the tactical console, scanning desperately for a pattern, for a weakness. Anything that could give them hope. Her mind raced, replaying every report, every warning she had tried to give the Council. They had ignored her. They had ignored the signals, the strange readings, the warning of railguns. And now, her fleet was paying the price for their arrogance. As the lead ships exploded around her, Lyra felt a strange mixture of fear and awe. Humans, small, seemingly fragile humans, had created weapons that could destroy the pride of the galaxy. And they had done it silently, without ceremony, without threat. They had waited, prepared, and now they were proving a truth the Council would never forget. Humans were not to be underestimated. In the chaos, Lyra's voice was steady, though her hands shook. "We are witnessing something extraordinary. Remember this moment. Humanity is not weak. They are not foolish. And if we survive this, we must remember that arrogance is dangerous." Outside, the stars were calm again, glittering silently as if nothing had happened. But the debris of the first fleet floated in the void like a warning. The humans had spoken without saying a word, and the galaxy would never be the same. The destruction of the first fleet stunned the galaxy. From the council chambers to distant observation posts, disbelief and fear spread like wildfire. Ships that had once been symbols of power now floated as twisted metal husks, reminders of the humans' deadly reach. Counselor Mex could not contain his fury. "Impossible," he shouted, slamming his fists against the command table. "Our fleet was the strongest in this sector. How can a species so small destroy our ships so easily?" Admiral Thar stood silently, staring at the holographic displays of the fallen fleet. He had warned them, tried to explain the danger, but his voice had been ignored. Now all that remained were reports of floating debris, scattered survivors, and a truth the Council could no longer deny. Humanity was not weak. They were lethal, intelligent, and terrifyingly prepared. On the bridge of her flagship, Captain Lyra felt a mix of fear, grief, and awe. She watched the destruction unfold in real time, hearing the panicked cries of officers and crew members. Many begged for retreat, others demanded to fight back, but Lyra knew their weapons were useless against humans' railguns. Size, numbers, even strategy. They all meant nothing when facing technology that could strike faster than thought. Her eyes scanned the planets below, peaceful and unsuspecting, belying the immense power hidden within. Humans had not even deployed troops or ships yet, and already the first fleet lay shattered. Lyra swallowed hard, realizing something she had suspected but had hoped was false. Humans were not only technologically advanced, they were smarter, faster, and far more resourceful than anyone had imagined. Admiral Thar, we underestimated them, Lyra said quietly over the comm. Her voice trembled, though she tried to steady it. We thought they were primitive, unorganized. But they are organized, disciplined, and deadly. Every strike is precise. Every attack calculated. They are unstoppable. Thar nodded grimly. I warned them, he muttered almost to himself. I warned them, and still they ignored it. Panic began to ripple through the remaining ships. Crew members refused orders, some hid in fear, and others attempted reckless maneuvers that only left them vulnerable to the humans' fire. The silence between railgun strikes was worse than the blasts themselves. Each quiet moment stretched endlessly, a cruel reminder that death could arrive at any second. Lyra clenched her hands on the command chair, trying to hold herself together. She thought of her fleet, of the brave officers and soldiers who had trained their entire lives for glory, and now faced annihilation at the hands of humans they had dismissed as inferior. Her throat tightened. Anger, sorrow, and awe mingled in her chest. These humans, small and underestimated, were rewriting the rules of war. She remembered the Council's words, the arrogance that had dismissed every warning. And she realized the bitter truth. This was not a failure of intelligence, but a failure of respect. The Council had believed power came from size, from fleets, from history. Humans had proven that power came from courage, ingenuity, and will, the things the Council had never respected in a small species. The remaining ships attempted to regroup, forming defensive formations in the void. Lyra ordered her best tacticians to study the human strikes, to find patterns, to find any weakness. But every calculation seemed useless. The railgun projectiles moved with impossible speed, guided by intelligence that felt almost alive. Each time the First Fleet thought it had found a safe path, a hidden station or orbital weapon would strike, tearing away another ship. By the time the battle reached its third hour, it was clear. Humans were not only winning, they were teaching a lesson. And the lesson was brutal yet undeniable. The galaxy could no longer ignore them. Captain Lyra sank into her chair, exhausted and shaken. She whispered to herself, her voice almost lost in the alarms and explosions. They are not what we thought. Humans, they are more than we can imagine. And the Council? The Council will learn this the hardest way. Outside, the stars continued to glitter, indifferent and serene, a silent witness to the First Fleet's humiliation. And hidden among those stars, humans waited, silent, deadly, and patient, ready to strike again. The First Fleet struggled to recover. The few remaining ships limped through the void, their shields flickering, hulls scorched, engines strained. Captain Lyra paced the bridge of her flagship, her face pale under the red alert lights. Every officer, every crew member looked to her for guidance, but even she had no answers. Humans, small, seemingly harmless humans, had turned their fleet into a graveyard. Desperation rippled through the crew. We can't fight them, cried Lieutenant Kren. They hit us before we even know where they are. Our weapons are useless. Lyra's hands gripped the edge of the command chair. She had expected resistance, but not this. This was something beyond fear. This was terror laced with awe. Humans were not merely defending themselves, they were showing the galaxy that underestimating them was fatal. For 2 days, the remaining ships attempted to adapt. The officers tried different formations, evasive maneuvers, even experimental tactics, but each attempt failed. Every time they thought they had found a safe path, a railgun projectile would appear out of nowhere, tearing through a hull, blowing apart entire sections of a ship in an instant. The humans' attacks were precise, calculated, almost surgical. Not a single strike was wasted. Captain Lyra's mind raced. She had commanded fleets through countless battles, fought against cunning species and brutal warlords, but nothing had prepared her for this. The human strategy was unlike anything she had faced. They struck from hidden positions, often from moons, asteroids, or silent orbital platforms. They did not need a fleet to destroy a fleet. One well-placed railgun shot could change the tide entirely. Amid the chaos, Lyra felt a strange respect growing within her. She had faced fear before, but this was different. The humans were not just dangerous, they were extraordinary. Small, underestimated, and hidden in plain sight, they had turned a defensive weapon into an unstoppable force. And yet, despite the devastation, there was no cruelty in their strikes. They were precise, efficient, and silent, like a storm passing through without a word. On the bridge, a young communications officer spoke up, trembling. "Captain, we're receiving another report. Another fleet ship has been destroyed. The humans. They're faster than we can react." Lyra nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "I know, I see it. Every strike, every movement. They're teaching us a lesson. And we have to survive it." She turned to her tactical officers. "Analyze everything. Watch every shot, learn. If we survive, we must learn from them. We cannot ignore this ever again." Outside, space was a deadly battlefield. Explosions painted the darkness with fire and debris. The stars seemed indifferent to the carnage, glittering as if mocking the fallen fleet. And through it all, the humans remained unseen, almost ghost-like. They had no armada, no visible command. Yet their power was absolute. By the third day, morale was fractured. Some crew members refused to leave their stations, others prayed, and a few broke down completely. Lyra walked among them, offering words of encouragement, though her own heart was heavy. She had never felt so powerless, yet so aware of a greatness she could not ignore. Humanity, she realized, was not simply a threat. They were an awakening. In the chaos of battle, she whispered quietly to herself, almost as a prayer. They are not cruel. They are not reckless. They are prepared, they are strong, and we have been blind to it. Every time a ship exploded outside, she felt grief and pride together. Grief for the lives lost, pride for the extraordinary skill and courage of the humans, and fear for what the galaxy would face if the Council did not listen. She knew that after this battle, nothing would ever be the same. Humans had struck once, and the galaxy would remember. And somewhere hidden in the darkness of human space, the railguns waited, silent but ready. Humanity's patience, ingenuity, and deadly precision had changed the rules of war forever. The First Fleet had learned the cost of underestimating a small, determined species, and the lesson was just beginning. The news of the First Fleet's destruction reached the Council chambers like a storm. Holographic screens flickered with images of twisted metal, shattered ships, and scattered debris floating in the void. Councillor Mex slammed his fist against the table. How is this possible?" he shouted. "Our fleet was the pride of the galaxy. How can humans, a species so small, destroy it with such ease?" Admiral Thar stood silently, his face pale. He had warned them repeatedly about the humans' railguns, but the Council had ignored him. Now he watched the disaster unfold with quiet, bitter satisfaction. "They underestimated us," he muttered, almost to himself. "No, they underestimated them. And now we see the consequences." The Council scrambled to send reinforcements, but every plan faltered. Communications with distant fleets revealed the same story. Ships destroyed before they could even respond. Crews paralyzed by fear and awe. Humans had not just struck, they had shattered the illusion of Council supremacy. For centuries, the galaxy had bowed to their authority, but now that authority seemed fragile, even foolish. Captain Lyra watched the reports pour in from the remnants of the First Fleet. The loss was staggering. Thousands of lives gone in hours and the remaining ships barely functional. She felt a heavy weight in her chest. Grief for her crew, anger at the Council, and awe for the humans. They were not simply a threat, they were a revelation. "Captain, another transmission from the Outer Rim," Lieutenant Kren said, his voice trembling. It's a message from Earth." Lyra's heart pounded as she opened the transmission. A calm, steady voice spoke, clear and precise, almost serene. "We do not seek war, but we will defend ourselves. The galaxy is vast, but arrogance is not safe. Learn, or your fleets will continue to fall." The words hung in the air like a hammer striking steel. There was no threat, no anger, only truth. Humans had struck without malice, without spectacle, and yet the weight of their power was undeniable. The First Fleet was gone, but humanity had sent a warning far stronger than any fleet could deliver. Councillor Mex shook with rage. "This cannot be. They are only humans. How can they defy everything we know?" Admiral Thar's voice was steady, almost mournful. "Councillor, this is the lesson we ignored. Humans are not weak. They are prepared, they are clever, and they are patient. We mistook small numbers for small power. We mistook simplicity for weakness. And now we pay the price." The Council chambers erupted into chaos. Members argued, shouted, and pointed fingers. Some demanded immediate retaliation, others urged caution. But the truth could not be denied. The humans had rewritten the rules. Size did not matter. History did not matter. Arrogance did not matter. What mattered was courage, preparation, and ingenuity, and humans had all three in abundance. Captain Lyra sat back in her chair, exhaustion and relief mingling in her chest. She had witnessed something extraordinary. Humanity had destroyed a fleet without even revealing their full power. They had demonstrated that even a small, underestimated species could stand against the might of the galaxy and emerge victorious. She turned to her remaining officers. "Remember this," she said quietly. "We were warned. We ignored it. And now we see what happens when arrogance meets preparation. Humanity is not to be taken lightly. Not now, not ever." Outside space was calm once again. Stars glittered indifferent as though mocking the shattered pride of the Council. But the silence hid something more profound. Humanity's patience, their strength, their ability to rise from obscurity and strike when least expected. The Council had collapsed under the weight of reality. And somewhere on a quiet, unassuming planet, humans continued their work unaware or perhaps unconcerned that the galaxy now watched them with a mixture of fear, respect, and awe. Captain Lyra whispered to herself, her voice soft but firm. "We were wrong. The humans were never what we thought, and we will never forget this lesson." The galaxy had learned in blood and fire that the smallest voice could roar louder than the mightiest fleet, and that humanity, underestimated for centuries, had only just begun to show its strength. The remnants of the first fleet drifted silently in human space, battered, broken, and stunned. Captain Lyra watched her officers struggle to maintain composure. Every sensor blinked with damage reports. Every comm channel crackled with panic, and yet despite the destruction, there was a calm that seemed to hang over the battlefield, a calm she could not understand. Then the transmission came. At first it appeared as a simple communication, a standard protocol signal, but as the message unfolded, Lyra felt an unfamiliar chill run down her spine. The voice was calm, firm, and clear. No anger, no threat, no arrogance, just certainty. "We do not seek war," the voice said, "but we will defend ourselves. The galaxy is vast, but arrogance is not safe. Learn, or your fleets will continue to fall." Lyra's breath caught in her throat. The words were simple, yet heavy with meaning. They were not taunts or threats, they were truth. Humans had shown restraint despite having the power to annihilate more than just the first fleet. They had struck, yes, but they had spoken without malice, teaching a lesson the galaxy could not ignore. Her officers stared at her, eyes wide with shock and awe. Lieutenant Kren whispered, They didn't gloat. They just told us the truth." Lyra nodded slowly, her heart aching for her fleet and for the lives lost. She thought of the young officers who had trained their entire lives for glory, only to witness destruction beyond imagination. She felt grief, yes, but also respect, immense, undeniable respect for humans. They were not merely survivors. They were teachers, showing the galaxy that power and wisdom could exist together, even in a species so small. She rose from her chair, moving among her remaining crew, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. "Listen carefully," she said. "This is not just a warning. It is a lesson. Humanity is not weak. They are prepared. They are patient. And above all, they are willing to defend what is theirs with precision and intelligence. If we survive, we must remember this. Always." The holographic map displayed the human colonies below, quiet and serene. Life went on as if nothing had happened. Cities glimmered faintly on the planets, unaware of, or perhaps unconcerned with, the fear their species had inspired in the hearts of the galaxy's strongest fleets. Humanity had chosen restraint, yet even that restraint carried power beyond measure. Lyra's mind wandered to the Council. The arrogant members who had laughed at warnings, who had dismissed reports as exaggeration, were now faced with undeniable reality. They had underestimated humanity, and the cost was catastrophic. But the humans did not gloat. They did not celebrate. They simply sent a message: prepare or suffer the consequences. A young ensign, tears streaking his face, asked quietly, "Captain, why didn't they destroy more of us?" "They could have." Lyra knelt beside him, her eyes filled with emotion. "Because humans are not cruel," she said softly. "They are strong, yes, but their strength is measured by wisdom, not by destruction. They fight to protect, not to dominate. That is why they are dangerous, not because they seek war, but because they are ready for it, always." For the first time in her career, Lyra felt true humility. She had commanded fleets, faced invaders, and survived countless battles. Yet nothing had prepared her for humans. They were more than clever, more than strong. They were extraordinary. The kind of extraordinary that forced even the most powerful to rethink their assumptions, their arrogance, their pride. The stars outside the fleet glimmered quietly, as if bearing witness to the lesson humanity had delivered. Lyra stared into the void, feeling a mixture of fear, awe, and admiration. She whispered to herself, barely audible over the hum of the damaged engines. We were warned, and we did not listen. Humanity, they are more than anyone thought. And we must never forget it. In that moment, amidst the wreckage and despair, Captain Lyra understood something profound. Humans were not just fighters, they were teachers, and the galaxy had only just begun to learn from them. The first fleet was broken. Only a few ships remained, their hulls scarred and systems failing. Captain Lyra stood on the bridge of her flagship, staring into the darkness of space. The stars glimmered cold and distant, indifferent to the suffering and destruction below. Yet in that darkness she saw something else, something alive and commanding respect. Humanity had spoken without words, teaching the galaxy a lesson it would never forget. The Council had fallen into chaos. Its members argued, blamed one another, and scrambled to send reinforcements that would never arrive in time. They had dismissed warnings, ignored reports, and underestimated humans, and now the cost was beyond reckoning. Ships lost, crews shattered, pride obliterated, and yet there was no revenge from the humans, no celebration of victory. Only a quiet, unyielding presence that reminded the galaxy of its hubris. Lyra moved to the tactical console, reviewing the battle again. Every strike, every destroyed ship, every hidden railgun had shown her one thing. Humans were not just clever, they were disciplined, patient, and precise. They did not act recklessly, nor did they boast. Their power was not measured in fire or blood, but in foresight, strategy, and resolve, and that, she realized, was far more dangerous than any conventional weapon. Captain, Lieutenant Kren whispered, voice trembling. They could have destroyed everything. Why didn't they? Lyra's eyes softened as she looked out at the void. Because they are humans, she said quietly. They are strong, yes. Deadly, yes. But they do not destroy for pride. They fight to defend what matters. They teach through example. That is their power. The message from Earth had already echoed through the fleet. We do not seek war, but we will defend ourselves. The galaxy is vast, but arrogance is not safe. Learn or your fleets will continue to fall. It was simple, calm, and chillingly truthful. Lyra understood that this message was not just for her fleet. It was for every corner of the galaxy. Every species that thought humans weak, small, or insignificant. It was a warning, yes, but also a revelation. Humans had patience. Humans had courage. Humans had railguns, and they were ready for anything. Across the galaxy, whispers began. Humans are not to be underestimated. Small species, enormous power. They do not fight for glory, only for survival. Fear and respect intertwined in the voices of every leader, every soldier, every civilian who heard of the events at the edge of human space. The galaxy was learning, slowly but surely, that the humans they had dismissed were far more than they appeared. Captain Lyra felt tears prick her eyes. She had seen death, destruction, and despair, yet she also felt awe, pride, and hope. Humanity had struck once, but it was not a strike of conquest, it was a strike of warning. They had reminded the galaxy of something it had forgotten. Power was not only in numbers, size, or history. True power came from courage, ingenuity, and the will to act when others hesitated. She turned to her officers. We have survived, she said, voice steady despite the exhaustion. And we have learned. Humanity is extraordinary. We were blind, but we will not forget. The galaxy must change how it sees them, how it respects them. Never again can we ignore what they are capable of. Outside, the stars shone quietly. Somewhere on a peaceful planet, humans continued their work. Engineers adjusted railguns, scientists refined designs, and families lived ordinary lives, unaware, or perhaps unconcerned, that the galaxy now watched them with fear, respect, and awe. They had shown restraint, wisdom, and unimaginable strength. They had proven that even the smallest, underestimated species could rise, defend, and teach the cosmos a lesson it would never forget. Captain Lyra whispered to herself, voice trembling with emotion. Humans. You are more than we thought. You are stronger, braver, wiser, and the galaxy will never forget you. The stars stretched endlessly into the void, bearing witness to a new truth. Humans had railguns, humans had courage, and humans had heart. The galaxy had learned in fear and awe that they could never ignore humanity again. The first fleet had fallen, but humanity's legacy had risen, immortal, unyielding, and unforgettable.